An Introduction to Pharmacology. What is it? Pharmacology is the study of drugs. In the early days of medicine, drugs would be collected straight from plants or animals. Today, the main source of drugs is from chemical synthesis. Pharmacology is a broad discipline that encompasses several areas of study, including pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics, pharmacotherapeutics, pharmacy, posology, and toxicology. Pause this video to read about each one. Drugs can produce more than one effect, ones that are desired and other ones that are undesired. Therapeutic effects are the desired effects of a drug. For example, medical marijuana has a therapeutic effect of relieving pain and insomnia. Undesired effects include side effects, which are mostly annoying and don't necessarily stop someone from using a particular drug, like marijuana can cause fatigue and dry mouth. Adverse effects could be harmful, like marijuana interfering with cognitive function like memory or perception of time. And toxic effects implies drug poisoning. Marijuana toxicity can lead to seizures and even acute psychosis. It's important to understand some basic pharmacology concepts. The site of action is where a drug exerts its effect, though for some drugs this site is unknown, and many drugs that we'll study that act on the brain, those are those drugs. The mechanism of action explains how a drug works in the body. Receptor sites are specific cell locations where drugs attach to produce their effects, and the resulting cell changes are called drug action. Agonists bind to receptor sites and produce an action, while antagonists, or blocking drugs, bind to those receptor sites and prevent an action. A dose-response curve illustrates how a drug's effect changes as the dose increases. At low doses, there may be little or no effect, but as the dose rises, the response increases until it reaches a maximum, the ceiling effect, where additional doses are no longer needed to enhance the effect. The ED50 represents the dose that produces 50% of the drug's maximum response and is often used to compare the potency of different drugs. A time plasma concentration curve shows how the amount of drug in the bloodstream changes over time, indicating the drug's onset, duration, and termination of action. This curve also demonstrates how higher concentrations can push the drug into the toxic range. The Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, requires all medications to be proven safe and effective. One of the first tests performed is the lethal dose 50, also known as the LD50, which is the dose that kills 50% of the test animals. The therapeutic index is the ratio of the LD50 to the ED50 and provides an estimate of the drug's relative safety. The higher the therapeutic index, the safer the drug. Drugs are known by many different names. Chemical names refer to the chemical structure of the drug. Generic names are shortened version of the chemical name, and the trade name is used by drug companies to market a drug. Drugs are also classified as prescription, RX, and over-the-counter, OTC drugs. Prescription drugs require an order from a doctor, PA, or NP. A prescription is a legal order that contains instructions for the pharmacist. OTC or non-prescription drugs can be purchased without a physician's approval, like Tylenol off the shelf. Drug references are important tools for allied health professionals. Each reference contains specific information about drugs. Go ahead and pause this video and you can read down below. Drug legislation acts govern the manufacturing, buying, and sales of drugs in the United States. And thank goodness, because, for example, heroin was considered a cure for the common cold in the late 1880s. It was advertised as a safe and non-addictive substitute for morphine. It wasn't until 1924 that the FDA banned it with the Anti-Heroin Act. In 1906, the Federal Pure Food and Drug Act required drugs to have minimal standards of drug strength and purity. The law was amended in 1912 to include regulations for labeling and false claims of effectiveness. In 1938, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act set standards for drug safety. The act was amended again in 1962 to include pharmacological and toxicological research testing in several animal species before a drug could be tested in humans. It also established clinical requirements for human drug testing. The Controlled Substance Act in 1970 was amended in 1990, and this act regulates the dispensing of controlled substances that have the potential for abuse. It also classifies controlled drugs depending on their medical usefulness and potential for abuse.